life.
Hi, yes, folks. This is the Learning Support Team in Rutledge. It's Mark here, and we have Julie Griffiths on the call. How you, Julie?
Hi, Mark. Good to be here.
Folks, this is just a presentation on drugs and drug abuse. Now, I'm no drug expert, but I've spoke with some of the our young folk, and drugs are quite prevalent in today's society. So, just thought I'd go through a few statistics, and we'll discuss a bit about drugs. Feel free, Joey, to chip in. You're a lot older than I am, but what I can say is, when I was growing up.
Don't know whether to be insulted or pleased with that, Mark.
When I was growing up, drugs weren't really about, and I'll show you a wee statistic later, but they were always there, I suppose, but it was very unheard of. Nobody mentioned it. But now I get walking down the street and people would happily take drugs in front of you. It's become a societal norm. And, you know, with these young people coming up now, Julie, it's it's because it's such a norm to them. They don't know what the effects are. They just know that, well, it must be okay to do it, even if it is. Oh, sorry, even if it is against the law. Um, what do you think about that, Julie? How do you feel
Well,
about this?
see, I'm from Colorado, USA, and in the state of Colorado, marijuana is legal. Um, and it was just interesting to me to see the difference before it was legal and after. Just the quality of life for a lot of people went downhill. There's the idea that, well, marijuana is a natural drug, therefore it's not going to harm you. But because of people abusing it and overdosing on it, we saw a lot more homelessness, a lot more people who couldn't function, psychosis, depression. And so, and just the smell is, I don't know if any of you have ever smelled a skunk, but we call it skunk weed because it's just that smell smells just like you've been sprayed by a skunk, and it's horrible. But yes, marijuana, I think sometimes the drug of choice because it's easily
So
grown.
that's interesting,
Um,
Julie. Us in the United Kingdom here, we're quite behind. In certain aspects with America. So even when it was legalized, the effects were still visible. There were still, there was homelessness increased. I'm sure the amount of psychosis and mental issues increased, and deaths with overdoses, even when it was legal. Is that right, Julie? Is that
it's interesting. After it became legal, because it was one of the first states to legalize it, we had a lot of people, coming in, thinking they get their dose, go buy their weed. Um, and as that happened, within 2 years, we just saw a huge increase in homelessness. Of course, I worked. That's where my career was, in the public library downtown. So we would see just people psychosis and people upset and yelling and just doing stupid things, and you just feel sad because they were smart, intelligent people. A lot of them. There was this one man, professor at a local college, and because of him abusing and other issues, he was on the streets.
and
And
I think that's
it
a
was
key
sad.
thing as well. You can have it, but even if it's legal, it's easily abused, and it's abusing it is part of the problem as well. So we'll move on here. So there's going to be a wee introduction. We're going to talk about side effects on drugs and how to avoid addiction. And abuse leads to addiction. Okay, you see many of these signs about nowadays. There's no smoking. We're not allowed to smoke indoors anymore. Even in general public areas, outside the main entrance of a hospital, though people still do it, you're not meant to smoke. There's people unwell with respiratory symptoms, people with cancer, they don't want to be around that. You're not allowed to drink in the street. It's marching season, and there's many people out there going to have a drink in the street. The law says you're not really meant to. And also, we know that cannabis and injecting drugs is illegal. So these are some of the signs that we associate with drugs in Northern Ireland. Okay, so the first thing, what are drugs? Well, the official definition is that they're chemical substances that affect the normal functioning of the body and or the brain. Caffeine is a drug. Coffee contains caffeine. Caffeine is a stimulant, and therefore it is a drug. Now, there's good drugs, there's bad drugs, and we'll get into that a bit more later. But nicotine, smoking is a drug. Hay fever tablets are a drug. Anything that affects the normal functioning of the body. So if you take antacids because you have a bit of acid, bit of heartburn, it's a drug. Okay, so chemical substances that affect the normal functioning of the body and the brain. Okay, we have a few examples here. We have cigarettes. As we know, cigarettes are a drug, they contain nicotine. And this is a diagram here which shows India has the most amount of money spent in their cigarette industry. The UK, we're not too bad because we've introduced e-cigarettes, but we don't know what's in e-cigarettes, you know, that are affecting the respiratory system. They don't know too much about it, but it's better than nicotine. It's better than smoking rat poison. Alcohol. We have alcohol. And you've many different types of alcohol. You've whiskies, you've brandies, you've distilled, you've brewed, you've wine, you've beer. Alcohol is legal. Interestingly, it wasn't always legal. Isn't that right, Julie? In America. Yep, if you want to give us a wee overview on that.
Yeah, 1919, while the soldiers were away fighting in the First World War, the people in the U.S. voted to abolish alcohol with the idea that it was destroying families. There was a lot of addictions, abuse of it. So you have the 1930s, the movies with the distilleries. And in fact, I hope we have time for this short story. My grandfather, he was born in 1917. So as a young boy, he grew up during Prohibition. And his stepfather was an alcoholic, and he had to go get his fix. And so my grandfather, his name was actually Russell, and his stepfather is Edgar. Edgar would take Russell to the hardware store to get nails, and while they were there, there was a little secret door, and they would go behind, and they would be playing cards and smoking and drinking illegal whiskey. So they still had access, so just making it illegal didn't actually get rid of it. It just drove the trade underground. The other thing that was kind of scary was people, alcoholics or people who needed their fixes, they would start drinking more dangerous alcohols. They're actually deadly poison, such as you would find, like in your rubbing alcohol and that kind of thing. They would drink it, and you now find it in hairspray. Um,
Kitchen products, cleaners.
yeah, yeah, and they would drink this stuff and actually destroy their liver and a lot because it was just we have it alcohol and hand sanitizer, so they would drink alcohol in these forms and to get their fix, and so that's finally it was repealed in 1933. But yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the reason why they repealed it, do we know, Julie?
Um, they thought it would be better to regulate it than to totally abolish it. So, you weren't. I think Northern Ireland, I just saw, has a new law about how long you can drink in bars. So they decided it was better to heavily regulate the trade than totally abolish it. So a lot of stores never sold alcohol on Sundays for quite some time. I think now you can. They had a limit to sales of when you can sell, just like here, how much you can buy, how many you can, go to the bar, how many alcohol, sometimes the bars themselves self-regulate it. So I think there was a better idea that it was less deadly to regulate it than to totally abolish it.
Yeah. Just to clarify, we're not saying alcohol is a bad, thing. It depends mainly on your background, if you're religious, if you're not. But it is recommended that everything in moderation. Alcohol is legal, but everything in moderation. It's that sort of it's open to abuse. So if you do take alcohol, please take it with the recommended daily units and in moderation.
And I will say, Mark, my husband was an alcoholic, where he had to have alcohol to function, and if he didn't have it, he would get. He said it was just a physical response. It took him quite some time to get off of it, and now we have to be, because he's a recovering alcoholic. We don't. I like a glass of wine on the weekends, just just one glass. Um, and so my husband joins me with the one glass, but that's it. We don't go to drink at bars, we don't go out because of that. So everyone needs to govern themselves. And I will say, I like a good margarita with tequila, it's great too, but I only have that maybe once a month. So, it's all about moderation, as you said, and knowing your limits.
And knowing your limits. And, yeah, definitely. And alcohol is a drug because it affects the brain, it slows us down, hence why it's legal to drink drive. People change, personalities change whenever you're drunk. You might say things you don't normally say, you might take risks that you don't normally take. And that's the effect of alcohol, and that is because alcohol is a drug and it changes the chemical balance of our brains and affects our bodies.
And the way my husband explained it to me was when he was drinking the whole time, drinking a lot, he would get up in the morning and have a beer so he could go to work, because he said he had to maintain a certain amount of blood sugar levels with alcohol, or
Yeah,
else he just felt horrible. So you becomes a part of what you actually need, and that's where you need to get help.
yeah, yeah. And binge drinking as well is a big problem. It's easy to binge drink. Going out, especially now with the bars opening, going to be opening later in August. But binge drinking can lead to is abuse, and abuse leads to addiction. And yeah, it's easily to be addicted, folks. It's easy to be addicted, and it's easy to abuse. So yeah, if you have no self control, maybe consider what's good for you. We also have the ganja or the ganji or the marijuana, the weed. Um, yeah, there's not a lot I can say here, folks. Just that we smell it. I smell quite a bit of it in Larne. You know, I had a neighbour that smoked it and it stunk. It's illegal. Bottom line, it's illegal. This is a drug that's become naturally acceptable in society, and they're talking about making it legal in the next few years to regulate it. But Julie spoke about that. If you do regulate it, it's still going to maybe cause a lot of problems. The facts are that it's a psychotic. It affects the brain. It can make you more paranoid. Um, you know, it's it's currently it's illegal, and if you're found with it, it's a criminal offence.
I just say two things about it. My husband smoked it for 20 years. Took him a hard time to get off of it, so obviously it's addictive. Um, but he said it would make him feel good, but he wouldn't. He never accomplished anything, and he's done more with his life as far as his career and his academics once he got off of it in his 30s than he did for the first 20, 30 years of his life. So it, and he said he was very depressed. He was paranoid. He thought people were looking at him. Um, so I will say, just be very, very, very careful. If you have a medical reason, talk to your doctor, make sure that you're very careful. But if you're just doing it for recreational purposes, there's really no need for that. So
No need. Yep, I agree. And then we also have injection drugs. Now, in Northern Ireland, especially, I'm from Antrim town originally, and heroin is in Antrim. And I'm sure I've no doubt it's in Lorna as well. Cocaine's everywhere, but heroin is very addictive. It's a drug that you've medical heroin, but it's very, very addictive and it's easily abused. And the amount of overdoses on heroin and cocaine, drug-related deaths in Northern Ireland, are have doubled since last year, according to the Northern Ireland Statistical Research Agency (NISRA). Really, really shocking. Um, I remember going down in Belfast and on the Dublin Road cinema there's toilets outside where you put in money and the door opens. So I went to the toilet and I put in my 20p and let the door open and two individuals fell out with needles in their arm and they were injecting heroin. Now the skin of these people that came out in boils, they were nasty, they were abusive, but they were needing help. These people need help, um, and society rejects these people. But somewhere along the line, they just got lost. Nobody wants to be a heroin addict. Nobody wants to be a cocaine addict. Nobody wants to be an alcoholic. These things happen because we can't face reality. So that's why it's important you keep your mental health in check. And if your mental health's not in check because your physical health, you're not happy with it, then sort it out. Everything's in your control. But yes, you can inject cocaine and you can inject heroin. Um, so very they are about cocaine's everywhere, and heroin is an it's not a new thing, but the amount of deaths coming in it recently in Northern Ireland is on the rise.
Yeah, I will say that again. In the States, I worked at the public library, and we would have people come in and inject in the bathrooms, the toilets. Um, and we were actually trained as staff. Trying to remember the drug, the not the drug, the but what happens is people inject themselves and they slightly overdose or too much and they slow their heart rate right down and their breathing stops. So if they don't get help immediately, their vitals just and they die. Which is really sad. They have children and their sons and daughters, and it just causes so much grief to everyone just because they can't control themselves. And so we were trained in this, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's a nasal spray where you spray this up their noses, and what that happens is lifts the drug temporarily off their brain and their vital signs, which is your so you can breathe and keep them alive until we can get help and they get to the hospital and get the stuff pumped out of their systems. But it's really sad. It really is terribly sad.
And folks, it just takes you to bad months. That's why the title of this PowerPoint is very important. Just say no. I've been offered cocaine. I have. I haven't been offered heroin, thank goodness. But I've been offered cocaine, and I've just said no. I've never touched a drug. Now that doesn't mean like a drug is in cocaine. Um, but that doesn't mean I'm better than anybody that has. It just means that I can say no. It just takes you to try it once, and you don't know what you're going to respond to that one time. That one time can lead to you being addicted, and then your life being ruined. Um, yeah. If you know anybody that is needing help, try and point them in the right direction, or contact your local GP or their GP, or the police for help. And that's the best thing we can do is help people. Okay, there's other drugs out there. There's magic mushrooms. I think they're hallucinogenic, um, where you can see, things. I've heard stories of people on it. Um, yeah. Um, you also have LSD, a party drug. Again, you can have it on a sticker on the tongue. Um, there was an interesting, actually, I was reading a book and there was a scientist and he jumped through the window and they done it as suicide in America. And this is in the 50s. Well, it turned out it was the government actually experimenting LSD on him. Um, and it all came out years later. But they had drugged him with LSD, and that was the effect. He thought he could fly, you know, and he fell to his death. Very successful scientist. Um, so then, why do people take drugs? Well, they take it mainly because of peer pressure. They say anyway. Um, so if your friends are taking it, you want to be popular. Why don't you take it? To escape from problems, curiosity, because they just want to try it, so they could say they've done it, and they just want to feel good. Um, I'm going to disagree. I'm going to say, from my opinion, from my experience, I think people take it, obviously, they take it for many different reasons, but I think they take it because they want to escape reality. They want to escape their problems and their tensions. And certainly, if they don't take it at the start for that reason, that is the main reason they do start or continue to take the drug. What is your opinion on that, Julie?
That was my thought. Is we for some reason our young people aren't getting taught proper ways of handling issues, resilience, overcoming tragedies, and so the pain gets too big inside, and so you need some sort of quick fix, which actually makes things worse. It doesn't fix the problem at all. It might be a temporary relief, but it causes so many problems, and you know. So yeah, I think it's just an escape, a
Yeah.
desire to not. You don't like your life, but that's not the solution because there are ways. And Mark and I are always here. If you feel that you don't like your life and you want to change, I believe in change. I believe people can really amount to something if they want to.
You've witnessed that,
Um,
Julie, firsthand. And
yeah, and there's no dead end. There's always hope, and I think we need to make sure that there is hope. It might not feel right now. Loss and pain can be really tragedy, but you do live through it and you do go on, and we can help you cope or point you in the right direction where you can get those coping skills. And drugs are not the answer for sure.
I agree.
I just want to say one more thing real
Yeah.
quickly. One of the results of drugs is while I'm living in Northern Ireland, and I'm just going to give this real quick story. I got married. I lived in Colorado. I love Colorado. I love the U.S. I lived there. I got married to a man from Great Britain. He was there on a visa, and we were applying for his permanent residence. And long story short, because in his past he doesn't do any drugs or alcohol now, been clean for 15 years. But because of his past life, if you've taken any drugs, you're not allowed to stay in the United States. And a lot of times you're not allowed to visit. So the consequences of the choices he made as a young person, he's in his 50s now, not only affected him, but they affected me, my family. My mom died. I wasn't there to take care of her. So, and I'm not saying this as a sob story. I'm just saying you have a
That's
choice to
valid.
make a choice now that will affect the rest of your life and will follow you the rest of your life. And so if you're ever tempted to do drugs, just think 30 years from now, I'll regret this. So I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. That's fantastic, Julie. That is fantastic. Okay, smoking as well. We have a side effect with smoking. You can see on the left hand side, your lungs should be pink and healthy and like fluffy. And a smoker on the right hand side is black, brown, and bumpy. Um, my father smoked from when he was 15 and he's now 58 and he's a bad cough. And they took an X-ray of his lungs and I seen it and it was all black. It was that on the right hand side. Um, we're just damaging our bodies. And again, nicotine's highly addictive. Um, as you can see, there's photos here of what drugs can do to you. The girl on the left, um, pretty looking girl, turned out to be the girl on the right through methamphetamine, meth, in other words, street name meth. Um, so, that girl didn't want to look like that. She doesn't want to be like that. These are obviously police mugshots, but this is the way drugs have the effect on the body. Again, the girl on the right, complete characteristic change. Um, scary, scary stuff. You know. So the decisions you make about drugs will influence your health, your education, your relationships, your job or career, and your happiness. So always remember Julie's story. Always remember Julie's story that, she would love to go back to America, but with the decisions people take in their life, can affect what happens later on in your life. If you have a drug record, um, you can't go on holidays to certain countries, you can't get jobs, it'll affect your health, your relationships, you won't be able to get certain jobs and you won't be happy because you've made a mistake in the past. And we should all be forgiven for mistakes, but that mistake will continue to follow you. So the decisions you make about drugs will influence your life. So there's tips here to avoid drugs, and one of them is don't be afraid. It's okay to say no. I've been offered drugs, and I've said no. Let's stop there. Let's stop there. Um,
And if you find yourself difficult saying no, run. I
run.
was in a position once, and I'm not going into all the details, where I was being forced or invited to do something I knew I shouldn't, and I didn't have the willpower to say no, so I just took off. I said, sorry, I have to leave, and I took off and I just went. Now I'm so glad, because if I would have stayed and done what I was being asked to do, I would have highly lived to regret it, would have ruined the rest of my life. So it's always
And
okay to
peer
say no.
pressure, it's saying here, peer pressure. And we often think about peer pressure as a negative thing, but it can be a positive thing as well. If you see your friend going to do drugs or thinking it's cool to do drugs, tell them it's not cool. There's people dying. I'm sure many of, and well, I'm not sure, I know that many or one or a few of your friends in Lauren here have died from drugs, and it has affected you. I've had friends in Antrim that have died from drugs. Sometimes you just need to remind somebody that drugs are bad and they kill. Um, and it's called tough love, but it works sometimes. And make connection with your parents. Talk about it. If somebody offered you drugs and you said no, then tell your parents, look, somebody's offered me drugs and I said no. Talk about it. It's healthy. They're not going to be angry. They're going to be pleased that you said no. If you see somebody doing drugs and you don't agree with it, tell your friends you don't agree with it and leave. The key thing is try not to get yourself in the position of when or where drugs are being taken around you. And like Julie said, find healthy ways to cope with stress. I maintain that people go into drugs to escape reality. You know, we've all had a hard day at work. We've all had a hard day training. We all work 5 days a week, maybe 7 days a week, with things going on. People's marriages break down. People have bad news about their health. They get told they have cancer. Maybe somebody passed away that's close to them. And we all cope and can't cope in different ways. And but drugs aren't the answer. They're a temporary fix to they're a permanent fix to a temporary problem. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean that if I take it once, I'll take it again and take it again, and I won't be able to come off it. um, but the problem that I took it for will eventually resolve itself. So find healthy ways to cope with stress. Talk to people, exercise, speak to your doctor, speak to a counselor, socialize more, buy yourself something that makes you happy. If reading makes you happy, go reading. Find out what it is that makes you happy. If you like water sports, if you like going out in the boat, go out in the boat. If you like going and playing tennis, play tennis. And at the end of the day, folks, it's your life. It's nobody else's life, it's your life. So you find what makes you happy. And maintain a lifestyle that makes you happy. Keep doing it. Um, and yeah, as I said, seek counselling, which is great. I've
And if
seek
and if
counselling, and it benefited me.
and if anyone needs help or would like, get out of the way, or has any, Mark and I are here, we're listening ear. We'll help you get resources, and you know, please come to us if you need help.
Exactly. There's always help out there. And I know sometimes that you might feel like it's all you on your own, or you don't need help, or you can't get help, or nobody wants to help you. You just have to reach out, or let somebody reach out to you, and there will always be light at the end of the tunnel. So definitely
And I've lived
seek.
long enough, as Mark said at the beginning, I'm a little older than he is. I've lived long enough to see that every problem that I've ever had resolves itself eventually. You might have to work to find the solution. It might not be what you want, but it will resolve and it will get better. So just have hope. Hope is something I think we're missing a lot of times, but hope is a great motivator
Yeah,
in a
I
positive
agree.
way.
The International Day Against Drugs. Well, it was on the 26th of June. That was on a Saturday, I believe, this year, and it has been the Day Against Drugs since 1989. So, good promotion around that there. Hence why we're doing this workshop. Yes, it's a bit late, but I thought it was very important. So, again, there's only one thing to say, and it's say no to drugs. Before I finish, I just want to go through a few quick statistics here on something local here in Northern Ireland. So, deprived areas, working class areas, are 5 times more likely to have drug related deaths in Northern Ireland for this year, the year 2021 to 2022. So, you're 5 times more likely to have a drug related death in your area. Already this year, there has been 189 deaths with drugs, and the majority of them were heroin and morphine. Okay.
Morphine's illegal. It's legal too. You know, it's a prescription drug, but still it's legal.
Yep. Yep. And we'll cover that in another workshop. Um, Majority of drug related deaths now out of these 189, heroin's illegal, but morphine is legal, are prescription drugs, and they're being sold on the street value, and it's worth quite a penny. You know, you have progranulin, you have um, tramadol, you have morphine, you have diazepam. These are all prescription drugs that people get from the doctor, but they sell them on the street. And yeah, most of the deaths are prescription related deaths, and morphine is one of them. Out of the 189 deaths, 40 or 89 of them were male between the ages of 20 and 45. And on the death certificates of those people that died with drugs, alcohol was written on it, of 30% of all the drug related deaths. So I think because alcohol is abused, we take risks. And when we take risks, we do things that we normally wouldn't do. Most people wouldn't take drugs when they were sober, but with alcohol in their system, they think, well, why not? And they don't know when to stop. But drink, drugs, um, don't go together, and they can cause fatal. Everybody is different, so what one person might take, it might not affect them, but what another might kill them. So they are some of the statistics here in Northern Ireland, um, through the NISRA statistics for this year. So folks, stay safe and stay well, and say no to drugs. And drugs, um, don't risk using. Get smart. Okay, don't risk using. Get smart.
And if you're tempted or you're struggling, make sure you get help. Talk to a parent, talk to a teacher, talk to a tutor, talk to us, a friend, and if there's an issue, problem going on, and we'll try to get you resources, point you in the right direction, get you sorted, so that you can live a really good life because you're all worth it.
Yeah, I agree, Joan. Thank you, folks, and take care.